Brett, thanks for joining us. Let's talk some ACC hoops.
And the phones are finally working this week, so.
Well, on my end, it was easy last week. All I had to do was talk. So you're the one who had to deal with the trouble.
Oh, no, but we appreciate you working with us. But once again, Brett Friedlander from the Wilmington StarNews. Heard you on James Turn this morning. You need to get an agent. You're all over the place now.
Yeah, especially in the upstate. Pretty good for a USC guy, huh?
Oh, okay. Oh. No. Let's just not go back to November 30th or whenever it was. So
we got you in basketball, though. So.
Yeah, that's right. But, yeah, the Gamecocks are struggling in basketball. But, well, let's talk Wednesday night. We were all looking forward to Duke and North Carolina and had our – I know, Mike, we were looking forward to watching that. We had a snow day, 2 days.
No school the next day. I had my whole night planned around that game.
Yeah, well, I was hoping to get there too, but I tell you what, you really can't appreciate how bad it was unless you were actually here. Now, obviously, up there in South Carolina, it's the same way. I mean, an inch or two of snow can cripple the entire area, but in this particular case, it just came so fast. I mean, we were expecting it. Everybody was ready for it. It just, it started around noon, and by 1 o'clock, it was already, the roads were starting to become parking lots. I was out at the grocery store when it started. I went in and it just started, and by the time I came out, the road next to the shopping center was like backed up, and there were cars scattered all over the place from slipping on the hill. My son works for the Durham Bowl, and usually he has about a 20-minute ride to get home. It took him almost 4 hours. So, you can understand how, even though it was only an 8-mile trip between Durham and Chapel Hill, Duke's bus probably couldn't get there. And that's the excuse they're using. That's the explanation they're using. And having seen, people abandoning their cars on Interstate 40 and Interstate 85 in the Triangle that night because traffic was so bad they were running out of gas, I can believe it. And, for them to call off or postpone a Duke-UNC game, it's bad.
And the reason I was looking forward to that game so much was they said a lot of the UNC alumni and booster base might not be able to make it, so they were thinking that they might fill up the whole place with students. And, I get chills thinking about how amazing that would be. But talk about the other game Wednesday night. It's bad when we're referring to it as, the secondary game, but Syracuse-Pittsburgh. Talk about that game, how big it was for Syracuse to escape from a former, nightmare place for them where they always lose to Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Talk about how huge it was for Syracuse to get out of there with a win.
It was big. It was really big. I think eventually Syracuse is going to get had. They're kind of living on borrowed time right now. But as I said a little earlier on the show that you just mentioned, to go undefeated and to have that kind of season, you need a little luck. I mean, you also need to be very good, which they were, and Tyler Ennis was one of the best in the ACC. So, him making that shot was not, crazy, but actually it was kind of crazy. But, I mean, if anybody's going to make it, he's one of those guys that you expect to do it. But the thing that really kind of just made me shake my head was Jamie Dixon helping the Orange House. Syracuse doesn't have a timeout. Zana makes the free throw to put Pitt ahead by 1 with, I think it was like 3.5 seconds to go. And instead of, letting Syracuse just take the ball out, run it, and kind of be a little unorganized with no timeouts left, Jamie Dixon calls timeout and lets Boeheim set up the play, which just kind of astounded me. And you see, great coach, second winningest coach of all time. He drew up a winning play. What's even crazier is last night, Steve Donahue of Boston College didn't learn from Jamie Dixon's mistake. He did the same thing. His guy missed the basket with 3.4 seconds left to go ahead by a point. Georgia Tech has no timeouts left, so Steve Donahue helps Brian Gregory out. Brian Gregory draws up the winning play. Marcus George-Hunt makes a three-pointer to win it, and it's I don't get the strategy. I mean, but yeah, that Syracuse game was a really good one. But I think that they're living on borrowed time right now as far as that undefeated record is concerned. I think eventually, whether it be Duke here next Saturday or even NC State on Wednesday, if T.J. Warren gets hot, I think it's just a matter of time before somebody beats them.
Yeah, I have to agree there. They've been struggling a few times. Clemson even hung in with them. Once again, you're on WSBF-FM, Clemson 88.1. We're joined by Brett Friedlander from the StarNews ACC. You mentioned Syracuse on borrowed time. What do you think is more likely, Syracuse losing at Duke, at Virginia, or at some point in the ACC tournament, which essentially would be another home game for Duke?
Yeah, I think it's going to be either Duke or Virginia. You know, everybody here, all the conspiracy theories among the Tar Heel fans, talking about how Krzyzewski didn't want to play in that atmosphere with only students, where there would actually be a home court advantage at the Dean Dome for a change. They're crazy, because basically what is set up is now Duke is going to play Maryland on Saturday, and they've got a game against Georgia Tech on Tuesday. Have to turn around and go play Carolina at the Dean Dome on Thursday, and then are at home against Syracuse. I believe it's 4 days. It is 4 games in 8 days, I think it is, or 4 games in 9 days. That's a crazy schedule, and the Syracuse team is the last one. So, whereas I thought Duke was pretty much a lock to win that game, it'll be interesting to see what kind of legs that they have left and how much the Cameron crowd kind of wills them through that and gives them a little extra burst of momentum. But I don't know if you've ever been to Virginia, but that is a very, very tough place to play. And the way Virginia is playing right now, they play just as good a defense as Syracuse does, and they are really kind of discovering themselves offensively right now. Malcolm Brogdon is becoming one of the better players in the league. Nobody really knows about. Justin Anderson is extremely athletic, and of course everybody knows about Joe Harris. So I think it's going to be one of those two games. I would have told you Duke more than Virginia up until Wednesday, but I would say that I'm kind of expecting it to happen at Virginia.
Right, and let's talk about the Clemson Tigers a little bit. Obviously coming off the heartbreaking loss on Tuesday night in double overtime at Notre Dame. Finish up, I think, one of the toughest stretches in the nation with 5 of 6 on the road. Talk about just KJ McDaniels and, some of the guys around him are struggling shooting, and how much of a chance do you think they have to pull off the upset tomorrow versus Virginia?
Well, first of all, I thought the Notre Dame game was a real opportunity that they let slip away. That was a game really they needed to win badly. Obviously, they had it right there. If Noco makes a free throw, they win it in regulation, goes to double overtime. What really kind of interested me in that game is if you look at the box score, how KJ McDaniels, in a game where there were a lot of fouls and a lot of free throws, called and shot, how KJ McDaniels didn't go to the line a single time in that game. I mean, it's not like he's a perimeter guy just shooting jumpers. I mean, he's a guy around the rim who's going to try to get to the basket and score from close range, and to not have any fouls called that sends him to the line, just kind of, I just kind of thought that was kind of strange. But as far as the game against Virginia, if they could win that game, I think it would definitely offset the ill effects from the Notre Dame game. It would give them that high RPI win that they really, other than the Duke game, don't have. Even if they don't beat Virginia, there's a stretch of games coming up after the Virginia game. There's a stretch of 5 games that really, I think that they need to win 4 of to have any chance at all of the NCAA tournament. And that's at Georgia Tech, at Wake Forest. Miami is in that list. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but they play one other game before they finish the regular season with Pittsburgh. In my way of thinking, because they've got that one big, RPI game at Duke, and it's getting better all the time with Duke, getting its act together. If they can win 4 out of those 5 games in that stretch to close the season before the Pittsburgh game, then I think that they got a real good shot, especially if they can go to Greensboro and win a game.
Yeah, you talked about Notre Dame going up there and losing, and Rod Hall, I know he felt terrible, but it looks like the Achilles heel from last year, free throw shooting, came back to bite him there. And you also talk about the remaining schedule for Clemson. They have 5 of 7 at home, including the 2 hardest games they have left on the schedule, and the 2 away games are against teams they've already beat. And you said at 4, I think we need to win 5 of those 5. I think we need to win all those, plus get a win over Pittsburgh or Virginia to make the tournament. But speaking of the tournament, how many teams do you think the ACC is going to send? And Are there any number 1 seeds? Do you think Syracuse is going to lock up a number 1 seed there?
I think Syracuse already has locked up the number 1 seed. I think Duke can still get back up on the top line if they pretty much win out. I mean, because they've got 2 games against Carolina left. They still play Syracuse, and then if they were to win the ACC tournament, I think that they could climb back up there, especially with the name recognition that they have. I think more likely you're going to see Duke on the number 2 line. As far as teams that are going to get in, we talked last week, and I told you that that the league was kind of broken into 3 tiers. That first 5, that first third was a lock, and I still think all 5 of those teams are, unless the bottom just totally falls out on any of them. I mean, even though Pittsburgh is not playing great, they found ways to win in overtime against the teams they had to beat. So I think those 5 teams are definite locks. You've got those 5 teams at the bottom that are definitely out of the picture unless they come out and win the ACC tournament in Greensboro, which isn't going to happen. And then there was that middle tier, and I think that middle tier of 5 has now been trimmed down. I think Florida State has really hurt itself. They had the highest RPI of that group, but they can't win for losing right now. I think the only win that they've got in their last 5 games is at Virginia Tech, who loses to everyone. And then Maryland is kind of scuffling, and Maryland doesn't have a top 50 win, and they're going to have a real hard time with a resume like that, unless, of course, they beat Duke on Saturday. I think right now, as far as the ACC is concerned, it's down to Clemson and NC State to get a 5th or a 6th or a 7th bid. I think NC State has put itself in position. They're 16-7 right now, 6-4 in the league, playing really well. Won 4 out of their last 5. They have to go up to Syracuse this week, but they've got some winnable games left. They also have some high RPI games left too, with a game against Carolina coming up and a game against Syracuse coming up. So, I think right now you're safe to say 5. I think eventually 6 are going to get in, whether it be Clemson or NC State. But it could end up being just those 5 if things don't go well for either of those 2 bubble teams.
Yeah, it would certainly be good for them to send 6 teams in. And one more question before we let you go. Let's talk about Clemson's superstar, KJ McDaniels. Like we said, big game against Notre Dame, and I didn't even realize he didn't go to the free throw line. That's incredible. But give us your thoughts on KJ McDaniels, and do you think he's NBA draft bound?
Not this year, but I love what he's done because he's always been really athletic. He's always been great on the defensive end, but I think he's starting to kind of round out his game. He's starting to kind of harness all that athletic ability and using it for for the greater good, I guess, for lack of a better word. But you see him now asserting himself offensively. You see him putting the team on his shoulders and really kind of taking over. I think that he's a year away from really being a superstar. And what will really help him next year is if Clemson can develop or recruit somebody else to help him with the scoring, so that all the pressure is on him and all the defense's attention is on him. If you could get him somebody like in NC State, like Ralston Turner has done for T.J. Warren over the last few weeks, hitting perimeter jumpers, 3-pointers to kind of make the defense honest and not have to just pack it in on Warren. I think that will help KJ an awful lot. I think he's an all-ACC player this year. Obviously not first team, but right now I'd probably have him on my second team. But as he grows and as he continues to add things to his game, especially on the offensive end, he has first-team potential next season.
Right, and Brett, once again, Brett Friedlander, before we let you get out of here from the Women's and Star News, tell us a little bit about some of the games you're looking forward to this weekend and what we can look out for in terms of regular season play this weekend, and thanks again.
Well, the games I'm looking forward to are obviously Maryland and Duke. Maryland is coming here to Cameron. It's going to be the last regular season game as ACC rivals. They are a heated rival. They don't like each other, especially the Maryland side. They just don't like Duke, dating back to all the Gary Williams years. And I am sure the Cameron Crazies are going to give the Terps a fitting send-off. And it's going to get really raucous there in Cameron. I'm going to be at the UNC-Pittsburgh game, which I think is a really interesting game because the UNC is clearly getting its act together, and Pittsburgh is a team that's had some struggles. And this is a really important game for ACC tournament seeding for both of these teams, and actually for Carolina, NCAA tournament seeding, because they don't want to be on that 8-9 line and have to play a 1 seed in the second round again for the third straight year. And the other game that I'm really looking forward to is Clemson, Virginia, because Virginia clearly is one of the elite teams in this league, but they have shown that they can be had. I mean, at Georgia Tech last week, with 9 minutes to go, Georgia Tech was up by 2. Obviously, Virginia took off from there and finished the game on a 22-1 run. But Clemson's better than Georgia Tech, and they're tougher at home. So that's going to be a really interesting game because Clemson's got a lot riding on it, like we said.
Well, Brett, thanks again, and I definitely want to have you back sometime. As a college basketball fan, I feel like I could do a whole show with you. So thanks again for joining us. Looking forward to a good weekend in the ACC, and we'll get you back soon.
You've got my number anytime.
Again, to Brett Friedlander from the StarNews ACC. We appreciate him coming on.